And last is a panel, W3C and the WAC community, with Paul Adenot, Christoph Guttandin, and Michel Buffa, moderated by Diéssica Gurskas.
So hi everyone, good morning. I'm Jessica, web engineer at Native Instruments. I'm here with Paul, Michel, and Christoph, part of the audio working group. We're going to talk a little bit about the background, contribution process, and a bit of future and ambitions for the Web Audio API. We could do a quick round of introductions, maybe a bit about your work in the working group, like focus areas in the API.
So I'm both in the audio working group and the audio community group. Technically, I'm the editor of the Web Audio API in the audio working group, and I'm the chair of the community group. That's my roles, but I'm just always running a bit everywhere. So.
Okay, I'm Michel. So I'm a professor and a researcher at the Université Cote d'Azur, University of Nice in the south of France, and I belong to a research group that was very close to the W3C. The W3C offices are next to us, and we've been working with them since 1994. So that's why in my team we are very involved in web standards. So I participated to different working group in the past, and I'm now the it's advisory committee representative of Université Côte d'Azur at W3C. So this is how I can join working group, and I joined the Web Audio working group a few years ago. But I'm more giving feedback to them. I'm the coordinator of a national research project with a lot of web audio development, and we had some special needs for low latency. We were not the only one, but we will talk later. But well, my role was sometimes to remind them not to forget things. And also, beside the official channels, you could go to the Slack channel. The Web Audio Slack channel, we are all here, I think also. So it's a good way also to give feedback. So that's all.
Yeah, my name is Christoph. I'm a freelancer. I build multimedia applications for the web, and as part of that, some years ago I began to write a polyfill for the Web Audio API, and I wanted to be that spec compliant, and that's why I began to read the spec carefully. And yeah, from then on I started caring about it.
Yeah, I have a few questions myself, but make sure you also add yours on our Slack channel. I asked, I think yesterday, nobody asked anything. Now I added another message there. I share my message again. If you have any questions, that would be nice. I reserved 10 minutes. The final 10 minutes is going to be for Slack questions. If you have any questions to the contributors, Paul said that future requests are very welcome, and he's going to implement it right away. I think so. Yeah. So my first question is to open this contributors background topic. What keeps you motivated on evolving the API, and what kind of your personal interest on it? Do you have any music background or kind of an interest in physics of sound or something like that?
Should I start? Well, for me it's music, audio, video, that has always been interesting to me. And that was actually my first job dealing with those things. And then I accidentally became a web developer, and now I have the chance to merge those two interests again, and that's why I'm so excited about it.
Okay, so I'm not a very good musician, but I've been playing guitar in punk bands when I was young, and I kept playing guitar. So I'm a computer scientist in a research group that is very involved on the web. So when I heard about something called the web audio, I jumped in, and I started to teach my students web audio. We started in 2012. I remember the day that we could open the microphone and plug something in the computer. So yes, my personal interest is more for live music, making things, processing sound live with low latency and all this kind of stuff, more than doing things, well, batch processing and things like that.
Yeah, for me, I've always been a musician, classical guitar, and then a bunch of other stuff later. And then again, I went to computer engineering. That was not too related. I ended up doing systems programming and low-level stuff. And one day I was like, yeah, I probably can process sound. Like I've got enough knowledge quite early on during my engineering school. So I tried, and it worked. And I was like, huh. Interesting. So I kept doing it, and then one thing led to another. I joined Mozilla, and I started the Web Audio API. My manager at the time told me, "Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, you bet." And so I ended up doing that. And he told me later it would be a good career move to join the working group and become the editor of the spec. Little did I know that a number of years later I'd be writing still nonsense on big HTML pages, but still doing it. It's almost the end of V1 now, so yeah, it's a good achievement, I think.
Yeah, I was also wondering what are the differences between a member of the working group and a community contributor in terms of, like, do you have a different power when it comes to deciding what goes to the final spec?
So that's a technicality, W3C technicality. So the difference between a working group and community group. So working group you can join either because you're an invited expert or because your company sends you and is a member of W3C. So that's quite a complicated process, can be expensive at times. The community group is very light, you just register and start contributing. The community group usually don't publish recommendations, so they don't publish standards. They can publish documents that can be implemented, but they don't have the patent protection, for example, of the W3C specifications. So usually big specs that are implemented in web browsers are specified in a working group with, again, what I said a bit earlier, transversal reviews. So for example, there's going to be a group that's going to look at your spec from a privacy standpoint, another group that's going to look at your spec with an internationalization standpoint, and those people are absolute experts at what they do, usually have absolutely critical input, and they understand lots of things about the web and know lots of things, so it's very, very useful to be able to have that. But these days, in the age of GitHub and community, participating in a standard is super easy. You just go on the internet and maybe chat with the developer or go on GitHub, open an issue, comment on an issue if you have something to say. And generally we accept all contribution. There is still a very specific thing where if you contribute text to the specification, in order to get merged in the specification, we have to abide via a patent policy because we want to make sure you're not contributing IP from your own company, that kind of thing. So a little bit of legalese has to happen, but it's largely automated via bots on GitHub and stuff. So it's quite nice still. But we are trying to make it easier and easier to contribute because, I mean, the more people that can contribute, the better the spec will be, that's for sure.
Yeah, I saw like in the W3C website, there's a list of member organizations, and I was wondering what's the difference to start contributing if you are already a part of, you join a company, there's already part of the organization, member organization, and if you are just starting from, like, you just want to be a community member. Like, I saw there's a call for participation on the website as well.
For example, the University of Nice was not a member, so I had to push them strongly to pay $8,000 a year so that the university could have representatives. And as I was the one who pushed that, so they named me as the official representative, and I can give grants, I can give access to community group, to other people from the university. Anybody can stay, well, I would like to contribute to something about cryptography. Okay, I can just go to the website, enter her name, his name, it was a girl this time, her name and email. So then she can go to working groups. So, but I had to push the university for that. So this is just one anecdote about to become a member, but universities pay less than companies.
Yeah, there are multiple tiers. So non-profits pay a small fee, and the more the company has money, the more expensive it's going to be. And you also have the concept of invited experts that join working groups and do work as independents. And it's also very useful because, as the name implies, they are usually experts in their field and we value their contribution quite a lot. But those people don't have to pay a fee. And since recently, they also can have travel grants to join meetups and stuff. So there's a bit of money thing going on, and we're trying to make it more accessible because it's usually quite opaque and less so these days.
Yeah, we're gonna move on to the contribution process. There's a call for participation on the website if people want to know more about that. I saw like in the community working group, there's a call for participation, kind of the process that you have to go through. I was wondering, how do you go from idea to a standard when it comes to the spec? And if there is any difference also from a community contributor to actual member of the audio working group?
I can answer as an editor. Lots of people come to me with ideas and that kind of thing. Some people have very structured ideas. Some ideas are a bit more loose. Our role as editor is to have a look at the idea, assess its merit, determine the edge cases, how you would write the English text, specification text. Sometimes the idea is complete bonkers and you just reject it right away. Sometimes the idea, in fact, is already doable on the spec, so you don't have to do anything. Maybe someone misread a paragraph or like didn't find the right specification or something. I don't think we do distinguish between whether or not the person is in the working group, and these days it's just GitHub repo. You just come in and say what you want to say. But yeah, it's not very complicated. It used to be much more complicated.
Also, if you are just developers and have made nice applications that are pushing the limits, this is true each time there is a new version. Or at the beginning of the spec, I remember when I came with my guitar, you remember? And I showed them what I was doing. They say, oh yes, it's possible, or it works. So they were happy to have some proof that it worked, that the spec was promising things. And now we are going to version 2. With some new things that you will present this afternoon, I think. So as soon as implementation will be available, it's also important to show what you're doing, because all the implementers in the browsers, they are happy to see what people do with applications, and also by implementing applications, you will find the weakness of the spec, or you will find that something is not well specified, and so on. So this feedback is very important for the group too. And it can be also a bit informal sometimes in the Web Audio Slack channel, for example, and then they will say, feel a bug, feel an issue, please write something. It's nice to show us your link, but do something more formal, otherwise we will forget. And also sometimes, well, I don't know if you felt that, but I had to remember them. remember this issue, it hasn't been fixed, and so on, because they've got, at the beginning, you had something like 900 issues at one time, yeah. So your issue might be a bit forgotten, so it's good to refresh the minds of the people. If you don't do this, don't complain after, as Chris explained, after one moment it's too late and you cannot do anything. So.
Yeah. The only thing that I can add to that is from a polyfill's author's perspective, if you can polyfill something perfectly, then that's a strong sign that we don't need that, because if you can't polyfill it, then that's a sign that something is missing and that should be implemented natively.
A bit of expanding on what you said about exploring the spec and using it and kind of seeing its limits. I remember one presentation from you, they were kind of making like a Rocksmith kind of game. Yeah. And I was wondering how ambitious it is to think about something like that with the web audio API nowadays. Like, would we pushing too hard?
Well, actually, I talked a little bit about this at the Games on Web workshop at the end. We were with Paul in Seattle at Microsoft Research for a W3C workshop about making games on the web and what are the different needs. And we were in the audio part talking, and so I showed what we could do with playing guitar real time, and really just developing some DSP code to guess the pitch. Well, I don't say it's very easy, but it's feasible right now. If somebody wants to make a Guitar Hero game that's a Rocksmith game, it's possible. I think so. I'm pretty confident. Just need some work.
Yeah. I think this particular thing is doable. There is no audio Rocksmith node, but you can be a bit clever and do pitch detection, that kind of thing. That should be right. But like, please push hard, and when it's either not feasible or like really ugly to make a working solution, or not performant, or that kind of thing, you have to let us know. You don't have to, but like, if you want us to fix your use case, then we have to know somehow. Like, as I always joke that most of the Web Audio API programs I write are unit tests. So I'm not the right person to explore the API. I can tell you all the weird edge cases of it that I'm pretty good at, but like, I can't tell you if the filter is not right for such and such use case or something. So just please push, please try to destroy it, and then we'll figure it out and follow up.
Yes, and also a lot of needs are related to web audio, but not directly, like being able to load huge assets from the hard disk or from your memory, being able to run applications offline. And we talked a lot about this at this game workshop, and it was also related to web audio, like loading big samples, without having to download them every time and so on. So sometimes you must also go to other working group, other pages, other Slack channel, other IRC channels, and say, well, I'm an audio developer. Please, can you help me find the right person to talk to, or the right GitHub repo to fill issues? Because my need is about loading samples and storing samples or whatever, or security. A lot of discussion was about, you remember, protecting my assets. Crypting the assets, or avoiding people to steal the assets. With video games, they've got graphics and all this kind of stuff. They want to protect that. I don't know how, but they had some issues, and also about making money from that. Web payment, how can I link my games, my audio applications to try to make some money? A lot of discussion were about this in this game workshop, and I think maybe one day it could arise from our community too. So yes, a lot of things are linked, and So sometimes it's a bit difficult to navigate between all these APIs, all these groups, and but just talk to somebody on a chat, and you will be guided, I think.
Yeah, for those who don't know Rocksmith, it's a way more complex than Guitar Hero. Like, you get to play songs against actual chords, so that's a bit more challenging for the Web Audio API, I guess. And yeah, moving on to inspiration, looking forward, I was checking out your presentation. You shared this rant on Twitter about people complaining about the Audio API. It reminds me of a thread that I saw on Hacker News. This guy was obviously ranting about the Web Audio API design, and the title was, who is the Web Audio API designed for? And I think that's a very good question. Like, when you design an API, you definitely have to think about the audience that you're designing it for. And I was wondering if you have any insights on this, and what kind of audience that you think. If you see, now there's people using, leveraging live coding performances, and what kind of audience you're looking in terms of inspiration, in terms of designing the API as well.
So the WebAudio API was started with a very, very strong bias towards games on the web. Hence the weird shape of the API, and then we tried to bolt other stuff on top, and that was before our time. At the time, the process to ship implementations was a bit less, let's say, it was a bit more fuzzy. It was a bit, you could push APIs out and there wouldn't be no intent to implement, no process to follow, no discussions, less discussions. You remember the prefix in CSS? We don't do that anymore because it's a huge mess, because everybody was pushing stuff in implementation in stable browsers all the time. So at the time Google pushed it, we had a different view on the matter. We wanted to do something like just audio worklet from the get-go, and then build something with nodes on top. However, we lost, so we had to implement the WebAudio API because lots of websites wouldn't work in Firefox. And so we were forced to implement the API without having a say, so we bolted a bunch of stuff on top. Now is the time to take a step back and to answer the questions that you asked, like who is it for? And well, accessibility on the web is really important, and diversity as well. So we would like to answer this question by saying it's supposed to be for everyone. It's probably not for everyone. However, it's a goal. And if we don't reach this goal, then it's a problem. And let us know about it, and we'll do something. The hope with the audio worklet is to be able to be an escape hatch from all this. Like, if you have a very, very particular use case, and probably you can implement it using the audio worklet, and that might serve as a proof of concept for an actual native node further or something like this. But yes, so the story was, yes, it was yeah, heavy bias towards games and a very specific opinionated API.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess we all agree that these people yelling in these stupid remarks about the Web Audio API, we don't like that very much. On the other side, we're a very small community here, and we all like it, and that's why we're here, and so on. But anyway, we are interested on what these people mean. No, I mean, I would really be interested to know what is the idea behind, even if it's really oddly expressed and undiscussibly and so on. But you know, what do you have any idea what they mean if you say, or what each means? What's the
you mean
deal?
the Hacker News article?
Yeah, what's the problem? You know,
The guy was complaining about the API details and how difficult it was to achieve something really simple with the API the way it was. But it was before the audio worklets, and so that's something to consider as well. I can share with you. I can share on Slack the article afterwards. But it was mostly about it's very difficult to achieve something that's simpler in other APIs, audio APIs.
Yeah, Paul will talk about V2 that will address some of these complaints. But if you look at people who are making, native development, they say we don't need nodes and graph and so on. So we just want inputs and outputs and do our thing there. At the Games on Web workshop, in the working group, we had somebody who ported the WISE audio engine that is used by many commercial games, most of them. And he said, I don't need any layer. I just want inputs and outputs and put my WebAssembly engine here. And he was right. For him, this is his use case. After that, you've got people from FOST, for example, that says, okay, fortunately now we've got the audio worklet and it's okay for us. It's another use case. And then you've got JavaScript developers. So
yeah, but it's very. I mean, what is really salient, what you say, is that in these two examples, WISE is itself something like a web audio API. Faust in itself is something like an authoring tool, a language, call it as you like. So come on. So it's super important that we hear that, and I see that you hear that. But how there is no solution for this on that level of discussion, of course.
Yeah, but I think the current way the web audio is going, it allows all these hybrid development schemes. And well, my opinion is that they are on the good track because they will allow all this sort of development.
Yeah, exactly. So there was some fear in the field that we would just dump all the native nodes and go full audio worklets. We could do that. I don't think we will do that. And I don't think the direction of the group implies that we're going to go this direction. We're actually, as I mentioned before, with the help of the community, we've did a gap analysis and found what is missing in the API. So for an obvious thing, as an example, a noise generation node. It's very simple, primitive. But it had to be hacked up with audio buffer source node, right? So we decided to add a new one. Of course, then we queue discussions for a 70 message on GitHub about random generation algorithms and which one to put in the standard, that kind of thing. But the audio worklet is good because it's going to allow everything that is not possible as a native node, right? And also enable the programming model that some company require or some project require. It's not about ease of use. Some stuff is not possible using the node model. And again, all use cases should be able to be done, right? So if normal native audio-like development cannot be done, then that's a problem, and that's a problem we've known for years. But it's like 2 of us or 3 of us, right? Plus the community, but we can't do everything at once, and we have day jobs and stuff. So, but hopefully it goes in the right track now.
Yeah, we have a minute for one. We have some minutes for the final question. If we could just to end this with. So with the emerging of technologies such as WebAssembly and developers being able to leverage more performant languages than JavaScript to do audio processing, There's a question that I was going to ask as well. With the emergency from Marchand, with the emergency of audio worklets and making audio in a WebAssembly, we will still need Web Audio API in the future.
I think the nature of the web is that we have different APIs for different level of applications, and if you build a simple music player, you might use the audio element, and if you want to make something more complex, the Web Audio API. And if that's not enough, you just do everything in WebAssembly, but there will still be other applications which make use of the audio nodes and are happy with it. So I think it's just a matter of the use case that you have at hand, and yeah.
My opinion is that as soon as you can hybrid things, so in most of our developments, we've got some small parts in WebAssembly, some parts with pure dynamic JavaScript, with very agile development schemes and very dynamic stuff you can move with the mouse and so on. That is not possible with languages you've got to compile because they are more static. So hybridizing things for me is something that is possible and that I encourage to explore. And instead of saying I'm just going to stay in my audio worklet or I'm not going to use only JavaScript, if you are curious enough, you can look at the different possibilities. Or maybe you can stay on your own comfortable, development scheme. But I think it's good to be able to use different solutions.
I think to add on that, if people have the fear that the Web Audio API is going to not be used, I'm going to ask them a simple question. How often do you see a website that is only using WebGL and a custom layout engine? Right? That's perfectly doable. You can have a very, very performant layout engine and rendering in WebGL in a web page and have just a canvas full screen. Right? That's the audio worklet, do anything. But people don't do that because most of the time you want, for the problem at hand, writing normal HTML, normal CSS is simply vastly superior. For example, in terms of accessibility, the programming model with CSS is nice, that kind of thing. So different needs, different levels of abstraction, different performance characteristics, different introspectability, different accessibility. So yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, we have actually another question. I don't know if we have time for it. Yeah, okay, so it's from Mozilla. He's asking, I wonder what everyone on the panel thinks the holy grail or ideal situation would be regarding audio and music on the web, and estimates how many years, decades it will take.
I will refrain to comment on time frame and time scale because I've been wrong enough before. But in general, we know what is missing. It's the problem. Some problems are hard and some problems are too fuzzy. So I don't know what to do. Usually, I try to reason in terms of use case and also a consistency in terms of API and abstraction levels. So it looks nice and it's not too messy. But again, I don't do product. I do infrastructure and low-level work. So you tell me.
Yeah, the last year I made a small review of commercial applications that were using web audio for music, not for ear training or strange stuff like that. And there were only a few. You could count them on your two hands. And here I think we've got Andrew McPherson left. We've got Soundtrap people. We've got, I think, people from Ableton who are here. I don't know. Yeah. So okay. A few companies are trying to make commercial stuff. We talked about Wise just earlier, but we are still in the infancy of the, economical viability of web audio, not talking about technology. And it's quite hard to predict what is going on, because with the plugins, for example, we are trying to mimic what happened with the DAOs in the native community. But I really hope that the web platform will show more interesting things. Like, well, so far the DAOs are nearly all collaborative. This is one step above. The plugins that are using URLs, that are for me the cornerstone of the web, is the thing that are hyperlinks and resources. But I hope that we will find new applications and not exactly doing the same thing we saw. So, well, I'm happy that some companies are investing in that, so far, when they asked for needs, they were sort of traditional needs. We want no glitches, low latency, very low-level stuff. And I was just wondering if you at Ableton maybe have some visions about what you could do on the web that you cannot do with traditional applications. Or maybe you can answer? I don't know. Okay, the panelists are asking questions. We reverse the debate.
Professionally.
There's no way I can answer that question. But one of the things would be weird things like ear training. Education is a big one.
Yeah,
Further comment?
I don't have anything to add.
I don't think that the Web Audio API is perfect, but I think it's the same thing as with latency, that we have to get used to it being imperfect, and it will always be imperfect because every native audio framework is imperfect. People are complaining about it, people want to change it, people want to make it better. And we should, of course, continue to evolve the Web Audio API and any other specification, but it's possible to build cool applications with it today, and we should just do it.
Yeah, I guess we don't have much time for, if you could keep it short.
Sure. I still believe that if we could play more around with the Web Audio API. Web Audio is a lot of stuff, and the Web Audio API is the Web Audio API. That is just part of the problem, of course. And the Web Audio API would certainly be something more important if we could play around with this in the native context more, right?
Yes, yeah, I guess we don't have, I have more questions, but I guess we don't have much time left. So yeah, thank you. Thank for the panelists as well, and yeah.
Thank you.